possibly along there you may have seen the splash of a Pacific white-sided dolphin. These are very active, and I didn't see any of these this trip, but you may have spotted a couple of dolphins out there, and they would have most likely be the Pacific white-sided dolphins. And we did go past some sea lions early that morning. These Steller sea lions, they are bigger than the Californian sea lions. The males can weigh up to about a ton. You know, these are big creatures. They push themselves up on their fins, and they can move really well on land. And they'll be forming colonies at this time of year. So you'll have the big male forming a harem of females, and they all come back to the place where they were born every year, and that they will bring up their young there. I always think it must be so painful going across these rocks with all the sharp muscles, but they don't feel a thing. It just shows you how thick their skin and the blubber is. But you know, imagine walking across that in bare feet. And then we reached Juneau early on that morning, on that first landing that we had, the first port. And Juneau is Alaska's state capital. It's in the heart of Alaska, and you can only get there by sea or air. It's surrounded on all sides by these soaring pine-covered slopes of Mount Roberts and Mount Juneau. And there are amazing hiking trails right from the town. If anybody hiked off, there's the Perseverance Trail that goes off through the valley, and beautiful, beautiful walking from the valley. And also the best whale watching trips, the world-class whale watching trips from Juneau to see the humpbacks and the orcas. And some of the wildlife and wilderness highlights around Juneau, we had the Mendenhall Glacier, where there's wild flowers at this time of year, beautiful wild flowers. Wildlife, these fresh glacial breezes, in other words, really cold. There's really cold, icy breeze that you get off the glaciers. And you may also have taken the Mount Roberts tramway, which whisks you up 1,600 feet up the side of Mount Roberts. There's incredible views, and we were so lucky. We had that clear blue sky. You couldn't have asked for better weather. Couldn't have asked for better weather. It was beautiful in Juneau. These views, the fresh air, and the trails up there above the tree line. So somebody was very kind to put in this tramway to take you right up to the tops of those, to the top of the tree line, so that you can see across Juneau. You may have seen black bear. Anybody see black bears around there? Yay! Well done. Yeah, it's two. Okay, we saw one as well, so that's us as well. So the bears were around. They've been out for about 2 weeks after their long winter sleep. They're eating the shoots and the tubers, so they were around. Or the brown bears, a little bit more elusive, but we were looking out for brown bears the whole time along the sides of the fjords. And quite fortunate for us, we stayed there till about 8:30 in the evening, so we could experience a little bit of the nightlife in Juneau, which was rather nice. A very long day and a nice end to the day in Juneau. And then our next stop was Skagway. And we sailed along the Lynn Channel, which just beautiful. If you can remember just looking out the windows or just going out on deck, and these incredible channels of the inside passage, and early mornings and in the evenings as the sun sets or the sun rises, the tops of the mountains get covered in this sort of pinky glow, this alpenglow, where the snow reflects the sunset or the sunrise. So it was beautiful, all times of the day, just a wonderful experience being up there. And then we got to see Skagway, the northernmost point of Alaska's inside passage. And between 1896 and 1898, for a very short time, 40,000 prospectors streamed through Skagway en route to the Yukon goldfields. And I like this photo. This reminds me, have you seen the film Call of the Wild with Harrison Ford? Have you seen? No? Great film. If you haven't seen it, watch it. It's a great film of Jack London's book, and it stars Harrison Ford, Han Solo, Indiana Jones, and I expect to see him here because they came to Skagway, they came to Haynes to film that film, and the dog is called Buck in the book and in the film, and this reminds me of Buck, who went up on the gold rush. And this was the famous Chilkoot Trail. So this was 1,000 feet up, 2 feet wide. This was the golden staircase that led up to the Yukon goldfield. So this was just to the left of Skagway. And you may have been on an excursion on the train up around that way. So this is where all the prospectors filed up this staircase. And if they stepped out of line, they would have to wait days maybe to get back in line again. To get up to the Yukon River, then they would wait for the Yukon River so that they could get across to the goldfields. And here we are in Skagway, incredible place to visit. As we said, you can't get there by road, you can only get there by sea or by air. So very few people come up to see this part of Alaskan history. And you may have been lucky to have got a seat on the train for a trip back to the days of the gold rush and across the gateway to the Yukon. But of course, we were there very early in the season, so we had a lot of snow. You couldn't get right to the Yukon. The snow was covering everything, but that made the views quite special. You lose that in the summer. If you come in the summer and there's no snow, it's a different kind of feel to it. So it is a wonderful time to visit at this time of year. And you may possibly have taken an excursion to Haynes. There are excursions available to Haynes. And one of the things about Haynes is it is the best place to see a moose. This is a joke coming up here, by the way, and I'm not very good at doing this. Or you may have seen 2 meese. So don't forget, when you go home, this is a new word that Cole and they're trying to add to the English dictionary. Plural of moose is meese. So we saw 2 meese. So don't forget to tell your family and friends that when you go back, that we were looking for meese. And I know some people saw hoary marmots. My highlight of the cruise, to see a hoary marmot. They're kind of related to the woodchucks. They live on the tree line. They properly hibernate. Bears say that they hibernate, but they don't actually hibernate. Bears just go into a very deep sleep, whereas the hoary marmots actually properly hibernate. Their metabolism drops so low that they are in proper medical hibernation for the winter. And then when they wake up, they like to sunbathe on the top of the boulders. So they hibernate in dens inside the boulders. They're quite safe from the bears when they're inside their dens. And then in the summer they'll come up and bask in the sun on tops of the boulders, and they'll be eating the vegetation around there. This is a young one, and there's an adult one. They're quite big. Did anybody see one? Yes, okay, well done, brilliant. So the hairy marmots around. It's also quite a good thing to call somebody. You know, if you're a bit cross with them and you're at loss of something to call them, you hairy marmot. Quite like that. And as I said, the inside passage, this is when the scenery was, it's very best at this time of the year. I can't overemphasize that. It really is the best time to see the inside passage, because you still have all the snow around on the hills coming down to the waterline. And the bears, as I said, we always look for the bears along the edge of the waterline. They're coming out of their winter sleep. But also the smaller wildlife, the things that get overlooked, that add to the atmosphere of this place. These are rafts of sea ducks. They spend the winter in the inside passage. So these are, you wouldn't normally see these, but the inside passage is an area of sea, it's an area of the Pacific that is protected. And so these birds come and spend the winter here, and they congregate in huge flocks. And at this time of year, they're desperately trying to pair up. So you see them displaying to each other, putting their head feathers up and flapping about and flying up and down. And then once they do pair up, they will move off to the lakes and the rivers to breed and bring up their families. But at this time of the year, you may have seen these big rafts of ducks. Did anybody see that on the inside passage? No? You may, when you look back at your photos, you may see these black lines across. They kind of line up and they'll dive one at a time. They dive down to feed. They eat mussels whole, so they'll swallow mussels and then just digest them. And here's one up close here. So here's the surf scoter. So these are some of the birds that we saw that were around. And the murreys, the common murreys. These are related to the puffins. They're part of the alkid family of seabirds. They've got very thin wings. They fly, they spend their whole life out in the ocean. They just come to shore to breed on the rocky cliffs, and they swim underwater. They're quite adapted for flying and for swimming kind of equally. So that was some of the wildlife we would have seen around the Lynn Passage and around Juneau. And then we headed up to Glacier Bay, and we're very lucky to do this. There's only us and Holland America, the sister company, that are allowed to go into Glacier Bay to get the license. So we're really fortunate, really privileged to go to this part of the world. And this is the map of Glacier Bay. And you can see that the wildlife is generally at the entrance to the bay around this area here.